So, welcome to another garden vlog day. It's nice and not so nice. The dew's dropping off the trees. It's pretty early in the morning. So far, I haven't gotten ate up by mosquitoes, but I'm sure if I sit here long enough or go in the back foresty, swampy areas, they'll be pretty bad. I think I just seen one on my head there, flying above my head. But as you can see, all the condensation and stuff on the plants is wet. We're gonna walk through the grass and probably get our shoes soaking wet. But there is a sort of a topic today, which here's the thing. I thought I invented stink water based on using sort of a compost tea, instead of aerorizing it, or aerobic compost tea, and using my coffee beer or coffee brew and kind of hybridized the two methods and created one. And apparently someone else thought that they invented this fertilizer method that they called Fetid Swamp Water. A guy named David the Good. And I was just watching one of his YouTube videos. I've like run across, the topic that comes up on YouTube when you're looking at YouTube. Fetid Swamp Water, I never knew what it was until yesterday. Late last night, I was watching YouTube, and the guy, I guess several years ago, he made a video about it, and he did like an update video, maybe a year ago, kind of reintroducing people to it. And he said, this isn't my method. This is actually, I guess he thought that he invented the same thing. He said the Koreans have been using this for a long time. This is ours. And it could probably use some more stuff in there to ferment down. It often gets like black soldier flies, larvae and stuff in it. That's like one of our first big buckets. I don't know if that's a 30-gallon or what it is. It's an old, like a horse feeder or something, horse food feeder. You put, a bag and a half, 2 bags in there. And it's got a pretty good seal. It's water sealed. Put the top on, especially when the sun is beating down from above, that black, it makes more heat there. Supposedly David the Good uses, ferments his stuff for about 2 weeks. But he also mentioned that the longer the better, or at least the Koreans said, you can do it for a year and it gets even better. So I guess stink water logs, all this stuff is based on what people have been doing for 100 years or more. So David the Good uses chicken manure, chicken guts, fish guts, whatever, plant materials, any kind of moldy bread or whatever, and he basically composts this into the water without air, without the what do you call them, air pump or whatever, that would be promoting, good bacteria, fungi, and stuff like that. This doesn't do that. This just provides nutrients. See all these golden rods, or all these Biden's alba here? You can just chop it down. Just use that. You could use that to ferment and just water it directly into, your plants. Now, he says he wouldn't do it like at the end of a stage where like corn was just about getting ready to ripen, because it's already done its thing. He said he wouldn't do it maybe on lettuce beds, but he said, like 2, 3, 4 weeks before harvest of even potatoes, he would use it on. It's some stinky stuff, even just with plant material. And coffee. It is kind of strange that, people can invent things not even knowing about the existence of these methods, multiple times over. David the Good probably invented this before I invented it. Then somebody else invented it maybe 100+ years before he invented it. I think one of the biggest benefits from doing it this way is you can kill off invasive plant materials and stuff by putting it in there versus just throwing it in a compost pile where it may root or spread, seeds or anything. When you're composting in this, it would be hard for me to believe that anything could survive this anaerobic fermentation process. And I think he pulls out the solids like the vines or maybe larger sticks and twigs or whatever that does not disintegrate into nothing and, discards it or whatever. But, you can use that in your building of your raised beds. Put that solids that is still full of that stink water, fetid swamp water, whatever you want to call it, Korean, organic gardening methods. And, let it compost down. It's dead. It's dead after 2 weeks probably, but definitely after 6 months or a year. What's the difference between it and like chop and drop mulching and permaculture? Well, like I said, when you chop and drop, there are certain items that people have complained, especially invasive stuff, that will root just by being, horizontal. And you're creating a soil when you do the chop and drop. You're, as it breaks down, you're creating a layer or several layers of compost, as that mulch, green material, whatever, breaks down. And now the mosquitoes are really swarming me because I've been here for a while. And in the stink water method, it's different because you're taking all the nutrients out of the solids. Any solids that don't break down, you're discarding or putting in your garden or whatever. And that water is nutrient-rich water and minerals and all that stuff, nitrogen, I guess. And, you can put anything you want into it. If you put, David the Good said, mimosa is good because it's full of nitrogen. It's a nitrogen-fixing plant, and it sometimes grows everywhere like an invasive plant. Do this with it. Take the nitrogen out of that plant and ferment it, and then just water it into the plants you want to have that nitrogen. So I'm okay with not having invented this original method, that the Koreans invented it. That to me does give me validation and verification that it actually works because they've been doing it. Whether or not there have been scientific studies about it, there are people that have been putting this method to use for, maybe 7 or 10 years already that aren't from way back then. And I did make a point, a few videos back about, how the pawpaw experimentation would probably be, or the progress would probably be so much further along had 20 or 30 years ago everybody kind of collaborated and shared notes with each other. And always make it a point to say the mango cultivar, which is a Georgia selection, one of the selections that is like closest to us, just because it's closer, just because the climate is maybe warmer there than it is in Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia or whatever, doesn't mean its genetics like it, another zone and a half south. It doesn't mean that, the chill hours get met. It kind of doesn't make sense that, that's close. That should give us more flowers and more fruit production than one from Ohio. But it just doesn't seem to be like even in Canada, the NC1. That thing flowers, at least somewhat in between like the sunflower and something else. Not quite as vigorous as the sunflower, but that's a Canadian variety that flowers, at least a little bit every year versus a Georgia, and we're in north central Florida, just in case you don't know. Had we shared knowledge, about these experiments and a lot of other things, probably loquats. And I'll guess I'll make another point. People have been experimenting with cold hardy, like Mexican hybrid avocados, the seedlings, for a while now. And there is a fairly new cultivar to the trade called Jade, which is an amazing tasting avocado. And I got to taste one the other day for the first time. And I guess they were scrambling to save that one, by getting a graft to work. So they took cuttings and stuff. But I don't know if the actual tree was fixing to get torn down or what. But they said, this is a fine selection and we need to save it. And they did. Now there are some in the market. I don't know how many people are selling them. It's probably not widespread. It's probably just around the north central Florida area, maybe between Gainesville and Ocala or something, that people have these varieties for sale. But it could be, it's definitely a contender against the fantastic avocado. And from what I've briefly read about, several maybe we initially got stuff from Texas rootstock and from those cold hardy varieties to bring to Florida. But now there are varieties being crossbred in Florida or experimented with, the seedlings of all of that hard work that people put in Texas and then bringing them to Florida and trying to get them to survive here, having issues with root rot and flooding, and overcoming those issues with like the aged wood chip raised beds and like the alternative beds that I'm trying to do to grow avocados in and stuff. Now we're getting Florida grown, Florida crossed, Florida introduced avocados that hopefully will become more successful in the commercial realm. 30-40 years ago, you may have had a lucky break in Gainesville, where there was some on like the university campus or whatever that produced for years and years and years, and some of them had like laurel wilt disease and died not too long ago. So people were saving seeds and stuff from that tree, possibly cuttings and grafting. But a lot of times they may not have had a rootstock that was hardy. So nurseries were saying bury the rootstock, and eventually that, if we get a freeze, it wouldn't, kill the rootstock off. The actual grafted part would eventually form its own roots in the ground. But, I got stuff from a nursery, 7-10 years ago, that failed. And they let me know that the rootstock was not cold hardy. And I don't know why. Why weren't they producing cold hardy rootstock from the parent trees and grafting onto them? Now there are enough nurseries that are grafting cold hardy scion wood improved cultivars onto cold hardy rootstock. That didn't happen, 10 or 15 years ago, or it didn't seem to happen enough. So we got a freeze. The top would have been fine, maybe. The bottom froze to death, and the whole plant died. So do not be greedy. Do not be stingy. Share your knowledge when you're in this nursery realm, because, it's just amazing that we have the opportunity to grow hundreds of or thousands of genetically different avocados, just based on you getting a avocado fruit, an avocado pit, seed, whatever, putting it in the pot, either having it grow in the ground and it survives the cold, or hardening it off for 2 or 3 years or whatever in a pot and slowly introducing it to colder weather and in the ground, and eventually not having to protect it at all. So it's hit or miss whether the avocados will be small or have a limited amount of flesh, oil content, flavor, and all that. You never know. I mean, I hear that people that do this often get pretty decent fruit, at least from these Mexican avocados. There's a lot of people now that have been planting the seeds and seedlings of their seedlings. So at least two, 3 generations of trees growing these avocado fruit that people like in north central Florida, not South Florida, not south of Tampa, not in Orlando, Gainesville, Jacksonville, and some people are experimenting a lot in like the Panhandle. I can only personally see the avocado commercial ventures getting better over time. They're at a place now where most likely anybody in the area with the right soil and amendments, and if you have to raise your bed or use the mycorrhizal fungi method, you have something. You have many choices now, and it's only going to get better. With pawpaws, we really don't have that. So this is something we need to get an established set of cultivars to go in this area and produce reliably. Only then can we start crossbreeding and trying to get fruit size, flesh to seed ratios, changed. A lot of them are seedy or mostly seed, and then flavor, and then that's it. I don't know what or how long it will take to make, the improved cultivar of north central Florida be anywhere near as competitive, I guess you would say, against the quality of a fruit from, a little bit north, 2 or 3, 4 states up north of us, If you have a random seedling or set of seedlings and you are productive with those pawpaws and they're good quality or, decent quality, tell the world, or at least the garden clubs around your area, I have this. Can somebody come take some cuttings, graft my material, and do you guys, anybody else have a decent one to come bring your scion wood, your grafted material to my garden? Let's trade, and distribute these things and try to come up with superior cultivars that, like I said, are productive in our environment. Take care.